Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the MarketSite studio, we have Gleb Budman, CEO of Nasdaq-listed Backblaze, the company that makes it easy to store, use, and protect data. The company has two key cloud services, computer backup and B2 cloud storage, both of which are supported by their proprietary Backblaze storage cloud. The company was founded in 2007 with their award-winning computer backup, and their B2 cloud storage offering is now disrupting the traditional cloud storage players. Backblaze went public on the Nasdaq stock market in November of 2021. It is great to have you back with us in studio, Gleb. Welcome back to MarketSite.
Good to be back here, thank you.
And Backblaze, you store data, and while inflation and interest rates and a strong dollar garner a lot of deserved news attention, the amount of data generated daily seems to grow no matter what.
It's true, it's true. And we feel that every day, right? You take a photo, you create data, you send an email, you create data. We're doing this today, and all the video footage is creating data. So regardless of market conditions, the data just seems to continue to grow. And IDC, an analyst firm, predicted that over the next 3 years, the market for storing that data, the data storage as a service market, it's going to grow 28% year on year to $91 billion in 2025 because the data just seems to keep growing. And so we feel lucky to be in a space where the underlying fundamentals just grow.
And I remember when you went public on Nasdaq last November, your company is one of those quintessential Silicon Valley stories where it started in a single room. Is that really the case?
It really is the case. My co-founders and I started it in one of our co-founders' one-bedroom apartments. So maybe just slightly bigger than the single room. It was a whole one-bedroom apartment. At one point, we had servers and hard drives all over the place, and periodically it would be funny when a vendor would stop by and unannounced and be surprised. This is Backblaze? Where is everything else? And so that was back in 2007. Over the last 15 years, we've pretty much bootstrapped the company on less than $3 million in outside equity, all the way from 2007 when we started to just before the IPO in November. And today, the company has 500,000 paying customers in 175 countries around the world. We have 3 million people who read our blog. We're approaching 100 million in annual recurring revenue. And we've done most of that in this bootstrapped fashion. So it's been a journey.
I mean, talk about running the company lean. It's so impressive. Why was November 2021 the time to take Backblaze public?
We had been talking about taking the company public for a little while, and the reason to take it public is we have this B2 cloud storage offering that customers love and a $91 billion market to go after. And so we really felt like we should put more dollars behind the growth opportunity of that market. And we wanted to do that in a public fashion because, in part, customers rely on us as the underlying infrastructure for their storage. And being a public company on the Nasdaq elevates the stature and says, we're going to be here for the long term. We're going to support you for the long term.
Right, and you have shown quite remarkable growth. To what do you attribute that growth? And more specifically, is your focus on middle market providing some advantages over other storage companies?
It is, and so we have the two products that you mentioned, computer backup and B2 cloud storage. And computer backup is just this very easy to use, unlimited backup, backs up all of your laptops and desktops for you individually or for your employees. And it's very easy to use. That product line grew 20% year on year this last quarter. We also have the B2 cloud storage offering, which helps with all the other storage needs. And that product line grew 45% year on year last quarter. So both are driving growth. The B2 cloud storage is accelerating that growth for us. Mm-hmm. That's on the product line side, so both are driving growth. And then to your point, we do focus on the mid-market. So we service customers of all sizes. We just closed a $1 million purchase order with a customer this last quarter, but we serve customers of all sizes, but we focus on that mid-market. And by mid-market, we say under 1,000 employees. And it's where the traditional cloud providers are not focusing. They're focusing on the largest enterprises, which is great, but they're leaving behind the 60% of the market, which is of that $91 billion, is in the mid-market. And we really aim to service them with easy, affordable solutions, which is what the mid-market cares about. So our offerings are, it's 1/5 the price point of the traditional cloud vendors, and it's dramatically easier to use. An analyst firm that found that our customers save 92% of their time when they use Backblaze. And so it's 1/5 the price, 92% of the savings on their time. It's dramatically easier. It's a really good fit. And especially in a choppy market environment
Right.
where customers are wondering about how to tighten their belt, having a product that's easier to use and dramatically less expensive is really a good competitive advantage.
And you went back to, it's a fifth of the cost of traditional offerings. How can you offer such a low cloud cost for cloud storage? Do larger providers perhaps have a scalable advantage?
People wonder that quite a bit because they're shocked when they hear it. It's only
Right.
1/5 of these traditional cloud runners. How is that possible? If you go back all the way to 2007 when we started the company, we were planning on building our computer backup service on one of the traditional cloud providers as the underlying infrastructure. But when we did the math, we said, we're going to lose money on every one of these customers. It's too expensive. And we looked at our hard drive and said it should work. The math should work if we can figure it out. And so we ended up actually designing and building our own storage cloud, focused on just being hyper efficient on the way we store data. And by focusing on just storage, not the 100 different products that the traditional cloud providers do,
Right.
and by focusing on the mid-market, which means we can strip away all the complexity that the largest enterprises sometimes require, we are able to drive efficiency in the storage cloud. And so just to give you an example of that today, our storage cloud is one of the largest on the planet. It stores over 2 exabytes of data for customers, 500 billion files for that 500,000 paying customers. And when a customer uploads a file today, our system automatically figures out how to distribute that file onto which of these 200,000 hard drives are best suited for it, chops it up into pieces, puts it on different drives in different places, and does all of that in a split second, and then enables you to get that file back from any of these 200,000 hard drives in a split second when you need it. So all of that is done in millions of lines of software code that we have developed and built over the last 15 years.
And efficiency certainly is in your DNA, having operated out of a one-bedroom apartment, which I find so impressive. And I also think equally interesting is when you discuss storage, that it's easy to think companies create data and then just put it somewhere for safekeeping, but it's much more dynamic than that. What's a use case, for example, for B2 that would surprise people?
A lot of times people think, when they think of storage, they go, oh, I just place it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there are absolutely use cases like backup and archive where that's the case. But customers also use it for all sorts of use cases: hosting, origin store, media workflows, data lakes, all kinds of things. One example that your viewers might be familiar with is Fortune Media. Fortune Media is the company behind Fortune magazine.
Mm-hmm.
But what viewers often don't know is Fortune Media actually produces conferences, does executive interviews, and they had hundreds of thousands of hours of video footage that they used to store in traditional legacy storage, and they found it difficult to get access and search and find the files they needed when they needed them. And increasingly, those files were being used, that historical footage was being used as a revenue source. And so they needed rapid access. So they moved all of that data to Backblaze B2. Now they're able to use the data, find the data, search for the data, get access to it when they need. It's much more dynamic, much easier to access. They've, in the process, saved 2/3 of their cost by doing that. And they've dramatically simplified the effort for their IT team to support that.
Yeah, and I also you mentioned before that 3 million people read your blog. I think I heard you correctly. Why is there such an attraction to it?
It is. There are a lot of people that read the blog. 3 million a year read it. It's fundamentally the content. We publish really compelling content and have been doing that for 15 years. One example of that is, I mentioned we have 200,000 hard drives. Well, we know a lot about what drives work, what drives fail, and how they perform. And on a quarterly basis, we publish statistical data about make and model of each drive and how they perform. And people love that information. It's the only place on the internet they can get it. And so they come to us for that. And that's just one type of example. Just a couple days ago, we published our mid-year report, which teased out really interesting insights of how hard drives perform versus SSD drives. And so that has gone viral. A lot of people have been interested in that data. And so I won't go into all the details and nuggets we found behind it, but people can view that on backblaze.com/blog and find out like what are the differences between those drives.
Yeah, it sounds like a great resource. For my reporting, there's some great trends that you can discern from there. And to wrap up, Gleb, you were one of the first in the cloud space. How do you see it evolving?
We were definitely early in the cloud space, and we see it as 3 phases. Phase 1 was companies saying, is this cloud thing a thing? Is this real? Do I have to pay attention to it? Can I use it for anything other than maybe some experimentation? And that lasted years. It took a while for companies to get comfortable with the idea that the cloud is a thing. Then there was a period of time that lasted half a decade or more where companies said, cloud is a thing, I'm going to do it, we're going to move our infrastructure to it. And by cloud, they really meant that one of the large traditional vendors. And then what's happened over the last few years is other companies have entered the cloud space, and customers have started noticing, I want the best of breed functionality from that cloud, I want the best of breed functionality from this cloud, and they've said, I want to avail myself of this multi-cloud opportunity. And that we're in the early innings of that part of the cloud journey, but I believe that that is the big next phase for it. And you can see that with companies that have picked specific verticals of the cloud stack. In networking, companies like Cloudflare and Fastly. In compute, companies like DigitalOcean. In communications, companies like Twilio. They've picked off parts of this and built large businesses to focus on these parts of the tech stack. And just to give kind of one concrete example, one of our customers, Big Cartel, they're similar to Shopify. They help companies put their services online, but focus on creators. And they had 1 million e-commerce sites that were built and running on top of one of the traditional cloud vendors. Well, that vendor had some outages and some other issues. They started thinking about a multi-cloud infrastructure. They moved a full copy of their data to Backblaze B2. They kept the original traditional cloud vendor as a backup. And by doing that, not only did they double their durability and availability, they actually reduced their cost by 50%. Wow. And that seems illogical, but they did that because they made us the primary. And because we connect with other independent clouds, they were able to lower their costs by using us as the primary and keeping the traditional cloud providers backup. So this multi-cloud is where we see the future headed.
That certainly is interesting, Gleb. Appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.